Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight we begin with Donald Trump's U-turns. He slapped tariffs to fix the US economy. Now he's rolling them back because he cannot keep prices down. He blocked foreign workers to force companies to hire Americans, but they don't have the talent, so he's welcoming immigrants. He blocked the Epstein files, saying there's nothing in them, but now he's been forced to release the same files. What do these U-turns tell you about the US president and the government? Their policies are trial and error. We'll discuss that. Also in focus, why Wall Street lost $2.7 trillion despite Nvidia's strong earnings. What caused the Tejas jet crash in Dubai today? What do China's drills around Taiwan and nuclear-proof island say about Xi Jinping's plans? Is he preparing for war? Why the Trump-Mamdani meeting is such a big deal? Plus a look at the Vantage deepfakes doing the rounds and why this is an issue that must be addressed urgently. How Australia has banned children from social media. Can AI erase money and poverty? What's inside India's booming beauty market and why Kenya's Masai have taken the Ritz-Carlton to court. All this and more lined up. The headlines first. The Indian rupee crashes to a lifetime low. It slid past the 89.5 mark against the US dollar. The rupee was dragged down by subdued risk appetite and uncertainty over the India-US trade negotiation. The rupee is now among the weakest major Asian currencies. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lands in Johannesburg for the G20 summit. He was greeted with a traditional welcome and cultural performances. This is the first G20 summit on African soil. US President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart are both skipping this year's meet. Iran accuses the Western powers of escalating nuclear tensions. This comes after a new resolution by the United Nations' nuclear watchdog. The resolution demands that Tehran provide access to its sensitive nuclear sites. Israel's war with Iran in June had derailed the nuclear talks between Tehran and Washington. Taiwan lifts all restrictions on Japanese food imports. This is the latest show of support for Tokyo amid its diplomatic row with China. Taipei had imposed a ban on food imports from 5 Japanese regions after the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster. And the United Nations COP30 deal is under threat as nations clash over fossil fuels. Host Brazil unveiled the draft text of the climate talks today. It made no mention of fossil fuels. Oil-producing nations have been accused of blocking any roadmap to phase out fossil fuels. You campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. It's a playbook followed by most politicians. They come with populist slogans, they make tall promises, but once they're in office, it's all down the drain. And with Donald Trump, this contrast is even starker. He promised grand moves in policies, but when things do not go to plan, he promptly makes a U-turn. He won't admit the mistake, but he will make a U-turn. Tonight, we'll give you examples, starting with the tariffs. The tariffs were supposed to fix everything wrong with the US economy. The deficit, the sluggish growth, the joblessness, all of it was supposed to be fixed by Trump's tariffs.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly.
That's what he said in April. Cut to November, and he's rolling it all back. A lot of it, actually. Trump has removed tariffs on key food items like coffee and tea, fruits and juices, cocoa and spices, tomatoes and beef, basically things you would find in most American kitchens. He's removing tariffs on them. Until this week, all these items faced tariffs. So why did Trump remove them? Because the tariffs made them expensive for American consumers. Their inflation was rising. Look at the grocery prices in the US. This is for the month of September. Prices were 18% higher than in January 2022. And if you remember, 2022 was peak inflation year. This year, under Donald Trump, it was worse. Around 14% of American families reported food insecurity in 2025. 14%, that's up from 12.5% last year. All thanks to Trump's genius tariffs. They made daily food items unaffordable for Americans. And finally, he's been forced to make a U-turn on them. He's decided to lift the tariffs on food items. Fun fact, this is exactly what Trump officials were warned about. They were told this will happen, that prices will shoot up. Let's rewind to June 2025. Here's what a US lawmaker told Trump's Commerce Secretary. She said, "You can't make bananas in America."
What's the tariff on bananas? Americans, by the way, love bananas. We buy billions of them a year. I love bananas. What's the tariff on bananas?
The tariff on bananas would be representative of the countries that produce them. There's no uncertainty if you build in America and you produce your product in America, there will be no tariff.
We can't
so
produce
the concept
bananas in
of
America.
building in America and paying no tariff is very, very clear.
We cannot
Fighting
build
for imports
bananas
is
in
not the
America.
Well, she was right. 5 months later, the tariff on bananas is gone. In other words, common sense has won. Of course, Trump won't admit that he was wrong. He still insists that prices have actually come down. It's a claim that he keeps making, and he repeated it this week.
We're also making incredible strides to make America affordable again. That's a new word that they're using, affordability. They talk They had the worst inflation in history. They had the highest prices in history. The country was going to hell. The only thing that we're going up in is our stock market, okay? The only price that we really have, I mean, we're bringing prices down, but they came up with a new word, affordability.
Well, full marks for confidence, but if prices are really going down, then why remove the tariffs? And why specifically on food items? They won't answer that. And this is not the only U-turn they've made. Look at the case of foreign workers. Trump's supporters are split on this topic. The tech bros welcome foreign workers. They want them. But the hardcore MAGA supporters do not. And at the center of the showdown is the H-1B visa. These are special work visas for highly skilled workers, like doctors or engineers or researchers. Around 70% of these H-1B visas are held by Indians. Back in September, Trump tried to curb them. He imposed a $100,000 fee on H-1B visa applications. And the intention was quite clear. You make the visa so expensive that American companies won't hire foreign talent. They'll be forced to hire Americans. That was the idea. Guess what? It did not work. So now Trump is rolling it back. He says the US needs foreign workers, and that you can't randomly ask unemployed Americans to make missiles. That's what Trump has said. Listen to this.
Does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we
a
have
country
plenty of talented people
no,
here.
You don't. No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have. You don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, "I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles."
Again, this is not surprising. It is true that the H-1B system is broken, but not in the way that Donald Trump thinks it is. America needs more skilled foreign workers. Maybe the selection process needs a shake-up. Maybe the costs need a rethink, but curbing them is not the solution. because America does not have enough talent. Look at this survey of employers. 71% of them were struggling to find talented workers, and this gap becomes bigger in emerging sectors like chips. By 2030, there will be 67,000 vacancies in the chip sector. 67,000. We are talking about technicians, engineers, scientists, and America does not have them. It needs foreign workers. Also, this is no secret. Ask any expert and they'll tell you the same thing. But Donald Trump refuses to listen. And now he's getting a reality check. With the rising inflation and the scarcity of talented workers, he's been forced to roll back. Plus, he's under pressure from his own support base. And that has forced another U-turn. I'm talking about the Epstein files. At first, Trump dismissed it. He said there was nothing interesting there. And he refused to release the files, but now he's made a U-turn. He has signed a bill to release the same Epstein files.
Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going.
You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me.
Remember, this is just month 11 of his presidency. We've already seen 3 major U-turns on tariffs, on foreign workers, and on Epstein files. What does that tell you about Donald Trump? That he's volatile. His policies do not come from research or logic. They come from beliefs. Trump believed that tariffs will work, so he imposed them. Now that the tariffs are not working, he's removing them. It's basically trial and error, or rather trial and U-turn. As we see this joke unfold from India, the only line that comes to mind is this, a line that gives everyone immense pleasure. We told you so, America. A tragic crash in Dubai today. An Indian Tejas fighter jet went down during a maneuver. It was participating in an air show. By all accounts, the pilot did not eject, and now we can confirm that he did not survive the crash. This is only the second time in the history of the Tejas that we've seen a crash. But even before the authorities could begin an investigation into what went wrong, something else happened. Pakistan's so-called journalists and trolls launched a campaign. They're using this mishap to target India. They're mocking the pilot, they're ridiculing the jet, they're spinning this tragedy into taunts. We'll tell you what they're up to, but first, the details that we can confirm for you tonight. The cause of the crash is yet to be established. We do not know if this was a mechanical failure or a human error. Of course, that's not stopping the Pakistanis. Consider some of the statements that they've made. Indian Air Force continues humiliating India globally. Tejas or Tandoori, today the difference is clear. Whatever we send up will always come crashing down, Indian Air Force. And it's all the fault of gravity. These are not isolated comments. These are part of a growing stream of online assaults, mostly from Pakistani accounts, most of which cannot be seen in India because of the restrictions in place by the Indian government on Pakistani accounts and handles. But the intent is unmistakable. To tarnish the image of India, India's security forces, and India's defense industry. So tonight, let's set the record straight. Let's show you what happened in Dubai today. It happened around 1:30 p.m. local time. An Indian Air Force aerobatics team took flight. They performed a routine marking India-UAE defense ties. There were crowds watching them from a distance. About 40 minutes into the act, The Tejas jet appeared in the sky. It was performing an aerobatic move. Reports say the jet made a steep vertical climb. Then it seemed to lose power. Moments later, it dropped sharply and crashed into the ground. The reason behind the crash is yet to be ascertained. As of now, it's being called an accident. The Indian Air Force has issued a statement. It says, and I quote, "An IAF Tejas aircraft met with an accident during an aerial display at the Dubai Air Show today. The pilot sustained fatal injuries in the accident. The IAF will ascertain the cause of the accident." Now, here's something else worth noting. The Tejas is not a new plane. It has had a clean operational record. The first crash happened only last year, and that was in March 2024 in Jaisalmer, a city in the western state of Rajasthan. The pilot survived that crash. Today's crash in Dubai is only the second ever. That's 2 crashes in 24 years. By all accounts, today's crash was an outlier. The Pakistani handles, of course, ignore these facts deliberately. At the end of the day, no air force is immune to accidents. What matters is how the system responds, how safety is reviewed, and how the planes are improved from there. And India is already working in that direction. It is building an upgraded Tejas jet. It is called the Tejas Mk-1A. It comes with major upgrades, including a modern radar system and technology to resist enemy jamming. The plane will have the ability to fire long-range missiles and air-to-air refueling. So today's crash is tragic, the pilot's death devastating. But this does not define the Tejas, it does not define India's Air Force, and it does not define India's defense capability. Pakistani handles did not wait for facts or an investigation or even a moment of basic decency. India's response will be guided by facts, not by trolls, and that is the real story tonight. Now let's talk about the American markets. They can't seem to shake off the bearish mood. Yesterday, the US stock market flipped. It rose sharply in the morning and crashed just as fast. It was the biggest swing that the market had seen since the month of April. It led to losses worth trillions of dollars, and the reason remains the same: the fear of an AI bubble. Investors feel that AI stocks are overvalued, they've risen too much and too fast, and they may crash. These fears have grown over the past few weeks. Yesterday, stocks got a breather with NVIDIA results being announced. Those results were for the second quarter from July to September. NVIDIA's revenue jumped by 62%. The company earned $57 billion, all because of the growing sales of AI chips. And this number, $57 billion, was better than expectations. So it lifted the market. The S&P 500 index was up by almost 2%. But then suddenly, almost unexpectedly, the sentiment shifted and stocks dropped sharply. At the end of the day's trade, the S&P had lost over $2.7 trillion. That's $2.7 trillion wiped out in one day. So the optimism around NVIDIA's results was short-lived. Here's what one expert has said, and I'm quoting. The NVIDIA results, while positive, weren't enough to dispel doubts around whether valuations had gotten too rich. What does that mean? They're talking about investments in the AI space. Tech companies are building huge AI systems. They're spending billions on data centers and infrastructure, but they're not making money from this expansion, from this investment. At least not yet. They're not making money. And that's why people are calling this a bubble. That's why investors are dumping these stocks. Even yesterday, it was the tech stocks that led the fall. Your big names like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, they were all hit hard. Each of these companies lost more than $100 billion in value. Even NVIDIA was not spared. The chip maker fell by over 3% on NASDAQ. NASDAQ, as you would know, is another American exchange. The fall, the 3% fall, wiped out almost $400 billion from NVIDIA's gains for the day. So despite beating quarterly expectations, NVIDIA lost money. What does that tell you? AI stocks are witnessing a correction. And it's not clear how far this will go. Will the stocks stabilize from here or will they crash? It's hard to say. Goldman Sachs has issued a warning though. It's a major American bank. It says there will be more selling. That's what Goldman Sachs has said. There'll be more selling. Another report says hedge funds could start dumping stocks. They could dump shares worth $40 billion, 40. And if that happens, the market will fall further. In fact, some estimates say that the sell-off can be as high as $65 billion. Also remember, these are not retail investors we're talking about. These are big funds. They use algorithms. They use market signals to make investment calls. And right now, those signals are flashing red. Plus, there are other factors driving the bearish sentiment, like the crash in the crypto markets. Bitcoin has fallen to a 6-month low. This is a sign that investors are pulling back from risky bets. They're also watching the job market. Hiring has picked up, but the overall job situation is mixed. Some industries are adding jobs, like your healthcare and hospitality. Others are cutting positions, like factories and warehouses. So the broader economic trends are also influencing investor decisions. Having said that, the biggest worry right now is still the AI bubble. Not long ago, AI was Wall Street's top growth story. It lifted all the stocks. Nvidia became the world's most valuable company. It crossed $5 trillion in valuation earlier this year. Tech firms rallied alongside. Together, they rode the AI boom. But now they're losing momentum. Investors don't want promises for the future. They want the returns today. They want the profits to catch up with the projections. If not, the markets will continue to fall, or to swing at least, and the AI bubble will deflate, if not burst. China is beating the war drums again. They're using civilian ships to practice invading Taiwan. They're building a sci-fi floating island and they're ramping up naval deployments. All of this has reignited the biggest geopolitical question of this century. Will China invade Taiwan? Let's look at their moves on the ground, or rather at sea. Let me pull up some satellite pictures for you. These were taken throughout this summer. They show the Chinese military practicing how to invade Taiwan. Now, do you notice something off about them? The ships that you see here are not warships. These are civilian vessels. We're talking about your car ferries and cargo ships. More than 100 of them took part in these drills. They practiced landing at a beach in China's Guangdong province. The obvious question is why? Why are civilian vessels part of a drill? We get using Chinese warships to invade Taiwan, but why civilian boats? Well, here's what a former Taiwanese admiral thinks.
Yes, is that they are trying to develop a kind of large number of the small amphibious landing ships supported by civilian sector, and during the wartime, they will conduct the multi-point, small, amphibious landing operations.
That's the obvious theory. If China wants to take over Taiwan, it must land soldiers there. How many? Experts say they will need as many as 1 million soldiers, anywhere between 300,000 to 1 million. That's how many soldiers China must transport to Taiwan. And how many can they transport? Right now, only 20,000. That is where the civilian vessels come in. They can help increase China's landing capacity. They can transport more troops and supplies, and this idea is not new. Civilian boats were used in the Second World War too. Around 800 of them. They rescued British soldiers from Dunkirk. So China's tactics are not unprecedented, but they do signal the intent to invade. And their preparations do not end here, not with these drills. Like I said, China is also building a sci-fi island. Think of it as a moving fortress in the sea. On paper, it's supposed to be a science and research facility, but listen to the specifications. The whole thing will weigh 78,000 tons. That's around the same as China's largest warship, the Fujian carrier. While ships have one hull, this one will have two. It will be mobile and self-sustaining. 238 people can live on this island for 4 months. No resupplies, no outside contact. They will be self-sufficient. And here's the most interesting part. This structure will have special panels on the outside, panels that can repel nuclear shock waves. Intriguing, isn't it? Why do you want to protect a science facility from nuclear blasts? Why has China made it shock-proof? Because their real intentions may have nothing to do with science at all. This is more like an upgrade on aircraft carriers. China can use these floating artificial islands to project power. Not immediately, though. This island will enter service only in 2028. Which brings us to the question we started with. Is China preparing to invade Taiwan? Well, there are 3 factors to consider. Number 1, the military preparation is not complete yet. China doesn't have enough landing ships to ferry soldiers. Even civilian boats may not be enough. So to invade now is a big risk. Factor number 2, while China is preparing, so is the other side. Taiwan is arming itself to mount a defense. This week, the US approved more weapons for Taipei, an air defense system worth $700 million. And it's not just Taiwan. Other US allies in the region are also arming. Japan has announced a $60 billion defense budget. $60 billion. Australia is set to get nuclear submarines, and the Philippines is getting F-16 jets and Indian BrahMos missiles. Now, we don't know if these countries will actively defend Taiwan, but they are certainly arming to mount a challenge. Which brings us to the final factor, and that is the trade risk. You see, China is dependent on global trade. Around 73% of their oil is imported from outside. Around 20% of their GDP is made up of exports. If that trade stops, China's economy will choke. And Xi Jinping knows this. He has secured alternate energy supplies from Russia. He's invested heavily in green energy. He's also trying to build a powerful domestic market. Despite all of this, China cannot survive without trading. If they invade Taiwan now, their global trade may be halted, either through blockades or sanctions. So to answer the first question, it wouldn't be logical for Xi Jinping to invade Taiwan now. But logic often does not dictate such decisions, and the intent to strike at some point is hard to miss. US President Donald Trump is set to have a meeting tonight, and it's all that the American press can seem to talk about. It's not with a head of state or a business tycoon. This is a meeting with the mayor-elect for New York City, Trump-Mamdani. He's been sparring with Trump for months. Trump called Mamdani a communist. His son called Mamdani anti-India. But now they're set to meet, and it's all over the headlines because New York is not just another city. It is the biggest city in America with a GDP of $1.2 trillion. It's also the city Trump was born in and politically broke up with. So this will be a high-stakes encounter. Our next report tells you what's on the agenda and if this meeting will decide New York City's future.
Traditionally, when a new New York City mayor is elected, they get a polite, handshake-heavy courtesy call with the president. The photo op, the pleasantries, the looking forward to working together. This is not that tradition. Before the two have even shaken hands, Trump labeled Mamdani everything from radical leftist to communist.
We skipped socialist and we put in a communist instead. That didn't work out too well. Well, I think you have to look. If he is a communist, you know there's not going to be a lot of activity.
He's threatened New York's federal funding. He's teased sending the National Guard to police the city. He's even joked about arresting Mamdani. And Mamdani? he responded with a simple message.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power.
So now picture these two walking into a room together. In a statement, Trump said Mamdani had requested for the meeting initially.
I think it's very telling, but I also think it speaks to the fact that President Trump is willing to meet with anyone and talk to anyone and to try to do what's right on behalf of the American people.
Mamdani also admitted that he had requested for the meeting, adding that he was willing to work with Trump on any agenda that benefits New Yorkers.
My team reached out to the White House to set up this meeting because I will work with anyone to make life more affordable for the more than 8.5 million people who call this city home. I have many disagreements with the president, and I believe that we should be relentless and pursue all avenues and all meetings that could make our city affordable for every single New Yorker.
Now, Mamdani's predecessors did not get an Oval Office one-on-one with the president. I'm talking about Bill de Blasio and current mayor Eric Adams. So this is a big deal. On the surface, the stakes are obvious. New York City is the biggest city in the US by population, with over 8 million residents. In 2023, it had a GDP of $1.2 trillion. New York City also depends heavily on federal funding for housing, transit, childcare, disaster aid, policing. A hostile White House can make life extremely difficult for a mayor. But beneath that, both men have much more to lose. He's the first Democratic Socialist elected mayor of America's largest city. His supporters didn't elect him to play nice. They elected him to pick fights about rent, public transit, affordability, policing, and childcare. If Mamdani walks into the Oval Office with too much softness, his base will accuse him of joining the establishment, or worse, selling out. Then there is Donald Trump. Mamdani is a perfect foil heading into the midterms elections next year. If Trump plays too nice, his own base might think he's suddenly collaborating or going bipartisan. But if he plays too rough and tanks NYC's finances, he risks being blamed for chaos in the city that he still claims as one of his life's great love stories. Trump loves New York, but he also loves having a villain, and he hasn't yet decided which role Mamdani will play. Here's the weird thing. There is overlap between Trump voters and Mamdani voters, about 10% in the last election. Call them the working class crossover crowd. People who voted for Trump in 2024 and Mamdani in 2025. People whose main concern is neither ideology nor personality. It's rent. These voters don't care if the mayor is a socialist or the president is MAGA. They care that the groceries cost more than their Uber ride. They want buses to be cheap, streets to be safe, and rent to stop rising. And that's why this meeting matters. Both men are technically fighting over the same thing, ownership of the affordability message. The question is who gets to frame it. Whatever happens in the Oval Office, rest assured, New Yorkers will be the first to feel it.
Seeing used to be believing. A lot of people thought the earth was flat, but then they saw it wasn't. A lot of people thought dinosaurs were imaginary, but then they saw the fossils and the remains. Such was the power of seeing something and verifying it. Not anymore though. In the world of AI deepfakes, seeing amounts to nothing, because what you often see is this. Breaking news today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has approved a summary bill of removing 50% of non-caste Hindus from the Indian Army by the year 2028. This summary comes in the wake of protests by Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, in which they had claimed that the sons of invaders are now polluting the Indian Army with their presence and they must be removed in order to complete the Dharam Yudh in this trilock era. That was a deep fake. It looks like our show, it sounds like our show, but we never carried such a story. In fact, that story is fake too. The Indian Army is not firing non-caste Hindus. It's a malicious piece of fake news. The original video was about India's new air base in Ladakh. Take a look at this. In a breaking news today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has approved a summary bill of removing 50% of non-caste Hindus from the Indian Army by the year 2028. This summary comes in the wake of protests by Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, in which they had claimed that the sons of invaders are now polluting the Indian Army with their presence and they must be removed in order to complete the Dharam Yudh in this trilock era. Earlier this week, a new air base was operationalized in Ladakh. India's Air Force Chief, Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh, landed there himself. He flew in a C-130J Super Hercules plane. The touchdown was in Madnyoma. Let me show you another example. This one involves the Army Chief himself, the Indian Army Chief. He's heard talking about removing non-Hindus from the Army. First, listen to the deep fake, then to the original.
Recently, our ranks have been debated whether non-Hindu castes should remain in the Indian Army. I brought this concern to the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, and his response was unambiguous. By 2028, non-Hindu soldiers must be reduced by over 50%.
TRS कॉलेज आना मेरे लिए बहुत सौभाग्य की बात थी, क्योंकि मैं इस बिल्डिंग के चारों तरफ तो पता नहीं बचपन में कब से घूम रहा था, सन 73 से, परंतु कभी अंदर आया नहीं, तो ये मेरे लिए बहुत बड़ा प्रेरणा स्रोत था.
Do you see how troubling this is? The Army Chief was talking about visiting a college, but his video and words were doctored. It was turned into something sinister. And look how real the clip looked, the audio, the sync, all of it looked natural. Also look at the reach. These clips have been shared thousands of times, so clearly there is an agenda here. Consider the first deepfake we showed you. It was shared by an account that claims to be a Sikh activist. His X timeline is filled with fake news. One post is linked to today's Tejas crash in Dubai. He claims Pakistani planes locked onto the Tejas, so the pilot panicked and crashed. Like I said, totally fake. Same with the Indian Army Chief's deepfake. We looked at the accounts that reposted it. All of them have the same pattern: deepfakes against the Indian Army and deepfakes favoring the Pakistani Army. Some of the accounts are also withheld in India. So chances are they operated from across the border. They're operated from across the border. Like I said, there's a clear agenda here. There is an attempt to sow communal divisions in India, to spread fake news about India's army, to split our soldiers along communal lines. The question is, why is no one stopping it? Last we checked, all these videos are still available on X. There's no community note, there is no AI label, there is no fact check. So what is the solution? Here in India, the government is mulling new AI rules. They would mandate AI labeling for deepfake content. And the onus is on social media firms. They must comb through the content on their platform. If they find deepfakes, they must label it. If not, they can be taken to court. Now, to be fair, some tech companies have taken positive steps like Meta and Google. They already put AI labels on deepfakes, but clearly a lot more needs to be done. Our focus should be on preventing such problems, because complaining later is not effective. You reach out to X, they may or may not take action. By then, thousands have already seen that deepfake. So our focus should be on prevention, and we can't just depend on the government. We must look to the judiciary as well. Indian courts are hearing several cases linked to deepfakes. Most of them have been filed by celebrities. They're asking the courts to protect their personality rights, basically to shield their likeness, voice, and so on. Let's see if the courts extend this protection based on existing laws. If not, the parliament may have to step in. In the meantime, what can you do? It will take time for the system to fight deepfakes. So what can you, the user, do in the meantime? Well, deploy all your senses. Watch the videos closely to spot red flags. Maybe a glitch or a lack of sync. That usually means that the video is a deep fake. Also think about what you just saw. Does the news sound too good or too bad to be true? Does it sound far-fetched or unlikely? If yes, then do your own research. Maybe download an application that checks for deepfakes. But most importantly, do not hit share. We say it's better to be a victim of deepfakes than a perpetrator. Our next story is from Australia. They're doing what others are still debating. Should children be on social media? That's the question. Australia decided they shouldn't be. They passed a law last year, and next month it comes into effect. Starting December 10th, all children in Australia under the age of 16 will be barred from social media. They cannot have social media accounts. No other country in the world has a law like this. Australia is finally enforcing it. So children under 16 cannot have social media accounts. Their existing accounts will be shut down, new accounts will be blocked at the sign-up stage, and social media platforms will be asked to ensure that no child can access their services. This ban covers the biggest names in tech: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, X, YouTube, Reddit, Threads, Twitch, Kik, all of them. Some other platforms have not been banned, like WhatsApp and Pinterest. And why have they been excluded? Well, the government says these services do not function like traditional social networks. They do not have public feeds, and they do not push algorithmic content to large audiences, so children can still access them. Which brings us to our next question. Why is Australia doing it? Why this sweeping social media ban? The answer lies in the data. It is alarming. 96% of Australian children between the age of 10 and 15 use social media. 96% of the children. 7 in 10 have seen harmful content. More than half have been cyberbullied. Several have been exposed to self-harm material, also content related to eating disorders and violent videos. The government says this is not just a tech issue, this is a safety and mental health issue. So it has decided to stop children from entering these spaces. And here is the critical part. The onus of enforcement is on social media platforms. It's not on parents, not on families, but only on tech companies. If tech companies fail to comply, they will face fines. Fines of up to $32 million, US dollars. So how will this ban work? Let me try to explain this simply. Social media platforms must now confirm a user's real age. They cannot trust self-declared birth dates or parental permission. They must use technology to verify the age of a user. This is called age assurance. How do you do that? It includes facial age estimation, video selfies, government ID checks, and AI tools that guess your age based on your online behavior. Although experts say that these systems are not perfect, they may let some underage users slip through, and some legitimate users may be blocked. Plus, social media companies have their own concerns. They say the ban will not fully protect the young. They argue that the implementation will be difficult, and the age checks could create new privacy risks. Of course, it's loss of business for them, so they have concerns. Some have even considered legal action. Many continue to oppose the law. But at this point, at least in Australia, they have no choice but to comply. Meta has already started flagging accounts. From the 4th of December, it will begin removing underage users. Others have also agreed to enforce the rules, and the world will be watching all of this closely. Do bans like these work? Do they keep children safe online? Because this is not just an Australia story. It is a global story. Many countries are trying to protect children online. All of them should. But none has gone as far as Australia. In the US, several states have tried new rules only to be blocked by the courts. In the UK, they have new safety rules. Tech companies face large fines, even jail time for executives, if they fail to protect children, if they allow children or allow illegal or harmful content to reach children. Other European countries have different rules. They allow children to use social media, but only with parental consent. Like I said, Australia is the only country with a full ban, and experts are still divided on it. One side says children need protection. The other side says the ban is too easy to evade, and it may even push children to explore more dangerous spaces on the internet. They may try something else, more dangerous. But Australia has made its choice, and its results may shape global policy going forward. Every few years, a tech billionaire makes a prophecy. Cities on Mars, flying cars for everyone, immortality by 2030, and now Elon Musk has added a new one to this list. He says AI will end poverty. He says humanoid robots will do all the work, production will become limitless, and humans will live in a post-money world. It's a beautiful idea. It's also a very familiar one because tech has promised utopia many times, but the real world has hardly ever cooperated. Our next report tells you why.
AI and humanoid robots will actually eliminate poverty. And Tesla won't be the only one that makes them. I think Tesla will pioneer this, but there will be many other companies that make humanoid robots. But there is only basically one way to make everyone wealthy, and that is AI and robotics.
That was Elon Musk, projecting the end of poverty, not through policy or politics or redistribution, but through robots. AI, he said, will make everyone rich. Humanoid machines will replace all labor, and humans will work only for fun, like sports or gardening. It sounds like a strange utopia, and the Tesla CEO really believes in it. According to Musk, the formula is straightforward. Robots plus AI equal to unlimited production, equal to no scarcity, equal to no poverty. He envisions a world where going to work becomes an optional hobby. In this future, humanoids like Tesla's Optimus handle nearly everything, from construction, caregiving, manufacturing, delivery to the tedious clicking of CAPTCHAs. Humans lounge in some kind of cosmic retirement, and these robots will churn out goods and services so cheaply, money becomes unnecessary. You won't buy things, you'll simply have them, like oxygen or social media. And it is not new. For decades, Silicon Valley has believed that all social problems collapse under sufficient computation power. Musk's vision feeds into a long-running fantasy that technology can teleport us out of messy human problems, that innovation is destiny, that hardware beats history. But history has pushback. In fact, tech optimism like this has a shockingly consistent failure rate. Take Wernher von Braun, for example. He is known as the father of modern rocketry. He once said humans would be planting flags on Mars by the early 80s. It's 2025. We haven't reached close. SpaceX is trying, sure, but Mars remains the world's most expensive long-distance relationship. Or flying cars, for that matter. In the 70s and 80s, futurists believed commuting would take place in the sky. Today, flying cars exist in prototypes, YouTube thumbnails, and billionaire garages. Meanwhile, the rest of us fight over parking space. Or people saying household robots will take over chores by 2000. What we got is a Roomba. It still bumps into furniture and fails to clean corners. Aubrey de Grey and the longevity futurists predicted that by the 2030s, life extension technology would outpace aging. We're in 2025. The closest thing we have to immortality is the Marvel franchise. And all of this is because innovation may be exponential, but adoption is glacial. It took decades for electricity to enter homes, even longer for cars to replace horses. Air travel, computing, biotech, all slow, all messy, all dependent on institutions. You can build a robot tomorrow, but you can't make the world ready for it with a software update. And it's true. AI and automation could dramatically increase productivity. They could lower the cost of goods. They could reshape labor, wealth distribution, and how we define work. But will they delete money? Kill poverty? Set humans free to grow vegetables and pursue hobbies? The answer is no. Technology can expand abundance, but only humans can decide what to do with it.
If you scrolled your Instagram for 5 minutes, you would think everyone is suddenly a beauty influencer. Every third reel features some beauty product. Someone is rubbing snail mucin or comparing 12 sunscreens or reviewing a serum that costs more than your rent or explaining the difference between niacinamide and retinol. But here's the thing. All of this is not noise. It is a signal, a sign of something much bigger happening beneath your feed. India's beauty market is exploding. For the longest time, beauty products in India meant a single cold cream or a bar of soap or maybe that one lipstick that your mother used. But not anymore. Today, it's a $21 billion market. $21 billion. By 2028, it could be worth $34 billion, and that's a massive jump. So what is fueling this boom? Why is India suddenly one of the world's fastest growing beauty markets? Let's break it down for you. The obvious answer is a young demographic. India's youth are driving this surge. They read the ingredients list the way earlier generations read exam results. Combine this with a culture of reels, influencers turned beauty gurus, a willingness to experiment, and rising disposable incomes. You put it all together and you get a market that is exploding faster than your favorite peeling solution. And then there is e-commerce, the great equalizer driving this boom. A decade ago, beauty meant 2 aisles in a mall. Today, a single website can stock more than 3,500 brands, plus endless homegrown brands that sell directly. According to one report, 96% of new beauty brands are primarily online. Online prices are 10 to 30% lower. Every price point has a product and entry barriers are virtually gone. And how big is the market size? Like I just said, India's beauty market is worth $21 billion. By 2028, it will reach or is projected to reach $34 billion. And then there's the luxury beauty market. In 2023, it was worth $800 million. By 2035, it could be about $4 billion. Also, luxury beauty makes up only 4% of the market. In countries like China, it's 25%. So there is scope for growth in India. The sales are surging, so is the funding. D2C beauty brands raised $63 million until September this year. D2C stands for direct to consumer. It's basically brands that sell directly to the consumer. They have raised $63 million. This is thrice the amount of money they raised in 2020. And everyone has a story. Everyone has a hero product. Everyone is getting acquired. All of this makes India one of the fastest growing beauty and personal care markets in the world. No wonder global brands are making a beeline. I'm talking South Korean skincare, niche Japanese brands, even popular US beauty companies. They're either entering India or they're expanding manufacturing or hunting for local partners. Now, India has had consumption booms before. We've seen the fashion boom, the smartphone boom, the restaurant boom, but beauty is different. And I'll tell you why it's different. First of all, it's recession-proof. Even in a slowdown, people will still buy their favorite serum or kajal at least. 2, it's aspirational without being unaffordable. 3, it scales like crazy. A viral reel can sell out an entire product in minutes. 4, it offers insane margins. Some categories run 60 to 70% gross margins, which means they're very profitable. 5, it becomes a habit. Once a routine sets in, consumers stick. They keep buying the product. And 6, women are not the only customers. Men's grooming is a $335 million market and it's growing. You put all of this together, the demographics, the influencers, the funding, the global brands, the viral products, and you get one of the strongest consumer stories on the planet. You could say India's beauty story is not just a boom, it's a shift. It's a shift in the way India views beauty and personal care. For our final story, we turn to Kenya, to the Masai Mara. It's one of the world's most famous wildlife reserves. It's a place known for its open plains and the Great Migration. That's the annual movement of animals across Kenya and Tanzania. But today, the Masai Mara is making news for a very different reason. A new luxury lodge has opened inside the reserve. It is run by the Ritz-Carlton, the global luxury hotel brand, and it's triggered a row. The location of the hotel has caused a legal fight. A court case in Kenya says the lodge sits on a migration route. It wants the property to be demolished. The case also questions how the project was approved in the first place. It asks why it received an exemption from rules that limit new development in the region. The authorities in fact dispute these claims, but the row has now put the reserve under the spotlight. Here's a report.
You may never have been to Kenya, but you have almost certainly heard of the Masai Mara. It is one of the most famous wildlife reserves in the world. It is part of a larger ecosystem shared with Tanzania's Serengeti. It is the stage of the Great Migration, often called the greatest show in nature. Every year, more than 1 million wildebeest, zebra, and other animals move across these plains. It is a magnet for filmmakers and photographers, and a once-in-a-lifetime destination for travelers. But today, the Masai Mara is facing a new controversy. And at the center of it is a new Ritz-Carlton Safari Lodge. It has opened on the banks of the Sand River. It has 20 luxury tents and peak season rates that can exceed $3,500 per person per night. On paper, it promises high-end tourism in the heart of the migration. But that same promise has triggered resistance, because community groups say the true cost of this development may be far higher. And that concern has now reached the courts. A lawsuit has been filed in Kenya. It argues that the lodge sits on a route used by wildebeest and zebras to cross the Sand River. It says animals have turned back from the new development, and it asks the court to demolish the lodge and restore the land. The lawsuit also questions how the project was approved. It points to a 2023 management plan for the Masai Mara. That plan calls for no new tourism accommodation until 2032. Yet the Ritz-Carlton project received an exemption. And conservationists say this dispute is only one part of a much wider problem. The Masai Mara covers about 580 square miles, and they warn that pressure on the reserve is rising every year. During the peak migration months, the strain is hard to miss. Safari vehicles crowd every major river crossing, and they disrupt the very wildlife spectacle that draws travelers here. Researchers say the number of camps and lodges in the Masai Mara has surged. They list a rise from 95 in 2012 to 175 last year. Many of them sit along rivers, and riverbanks are the places where migrating herds try to cross. But the developers and the authorities reject that criticism. They say the Ritz-Carlton Lodge is not inside a core migration route. They cite an environmental audit saying the nearest major wildebeest crossing is several miles away. They say all required approvals were obtained and that it would get economic benefits. Court documents reportedly estimate $25 million in tax revenue over 6 years. The documents also show it will support local communities, including Maasai workers, and that is what makes this dispute so complex. Kenya depends on tourism. It needs investment, it wants high-value visitors, and global brands help drive that demand. But Kenya also needs the migration to survive. It needs open corridors for wildlife and the ecosystem to stay healthy. It also needs the Maasai people to feel protected on their ancestral land. So, two priorities, both essential. Both are competing for the same space. A court will reportedly hear the case in December. Its ruling will decide the fate of one lodge. But the larger question remains: what kind of Masai Mara will Kenya allow in the years ahead?
When world leaders post on social media, you listen. It's likely some policy announcement, or maybe a political statement, or maybe a reaction to something else. But when Donald Trump posts, beware, because it could be literally anything, from a real war to a tariff war to a deep fake. And this time, Trump has outdone himself. He recently hosted footballer Cristiano Ronaldo at the Oval Office. Look at what Trump posted afterwards. Before we wrap, we have some news for you. Firstpost is bringing you a special 5-part series called The Dictator. We'll trace the rise, the rule and the fall of 5 different strongmen, their politics, their ambitions, their ruthlessness and their crimes. We'll be uploading the first episode at 8 p.m. IST on Saturday. It will trace the journey of Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. Make sure you tune in for all 5 episodes on our YouTube channel. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A fire breaks out at the COP30 climate summit in Brazil. An Israeli settler attack near Nablus leads to mass violence in West Bank. And a Paris museum unveils Princess Diana's wax statue in a famous revenge dress. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1995, the presidents of Bosnia, Croatia and Serbia agreed on the Dayton Accords. This was the peace agreement that ended the Bosnian War. It was brokered by the United States of America. The warring parties agreed on a single sovereign state known as Bosnia and Herzegovina. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.
I was a revolutionary. I became a ruler. I claimed to protect my people. I terrorized them instead. I built palaces. I started wars. I lost everything. Some called me a defender of Arab pride. History remembers me as a dictator. Who am I?